very quick. Back. It was just slightly out of reach.
Ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Age of Warfare podcast. I am Cetonian Antius Maximus. That's my man, the Gate, Aiden Cordier. And we got a kind of a fun episode for you guys. Getting away from politics and, hard history, we're going to go into more of a lighthearted topic. We're going to be talking about vampires. Yes, but not the vampires you are thinking of, even though you're not entirely wrong thinking that. We're going to be talking about a certain topic. We're going to be talking about how vampires have actually affected history. Yes, that's an actual thing that's happened. Ethan Collier decided to pick the topics this time around, and he picked what I thought was a really interesting one. So, we're going to have some fun with this one, guys. So, grab a chair, grab some popcorn, and enjoy the show. And before we get started, as always, Aiden, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing all right. I've had a good weekend so far. Been lots of tidying and cleaning because it's nice weather here. And Matt went to the arcade, played a bit of pool with my son yesterday, which was
nice.
Good fun. Went to the fair, which was slightly disappointing, but we did play bumper cars, which was amazing. I always love bumper cars. It's taken to a 12-year-old. It's brilliant. But yeah, apart from that, I'm doing pretty well at the moment. How about you?
I'm doing really good. Everything's going well. I just launched my new book, Frogs and Margaritas 4. Not just going A-okay. Things are going well with that. And just looking forward to the long week. Enjoying the long Memorial Day weekend here. Not sure that's the thing out where you are on Memorial Day.
It's a bank holiday this coming Monday, but because I work in the shop, obviously bank holidays mean nothing to
bank holidays mean nothing. Okay, well,
yeah.
But anyway,
time for the kids though. So.
Yeah, that's true. So as always, before we get started, as always, questions, comments always welcomed. Join the show, and this will be uploaded to YouTube later on after. So in case you missed it, you'll be able to catch that later on. And you'll be able to catch it on the Book Asylum Podcast Facebook group. So now that we got all that business taken care of, Aiden, why don't you start off with how did you get the idea for this topic, first of all?
So it was a bit of a tangent when I was thinking about what we've been discussing previously about how you get one story and then it ends up changing the more it's told, and that's how you end up with propaganda and things. I just thought something a little bit different. You get this a lot with stuff in mythology, and how we have stuff in sort of like the cinema and books and things like that we like these days. But actually, it goes right the way back to things that we knew from history back then, when people actually did believe that these things were real. As well. So if people can think back to the Halloween episode we did, we were talking about things like iron stopping certain fey creatures and things like that. This is some of the essence of that, really, of what was it originally that people thought were vampires, and how did they deal with that at the time, and what we have now. How does that actually connect to any of that? Is it actually stuff that we've made up over the years? Is it just mythology that we think of? I think like when people think about wizards, for example, like Harry Potter always comes up, and that's very modern, for example. So when you talk about vampires, are we talking about what was the latest one to come out? There was a latest one to come out in the cinema. There's a film about vampires, and then you've got all the things like Buffy, if you go back to the 90s.
Right, I was like,
and then all the stuff in between where it's sort of like this, vampires became very popular.
So what we have a picture of is a picture of three most like English soldiers. I'm not sure what they are. They find a corpse with a wooden stake stuck through his heart, and it says the discovery of the desecrated corpse. So it's almost like, I'm not sure if it's propaganda or what it is, but it's a picture of three soldiers finding a woman with a wooden stake through her heart. But it's just to show you that the idea of vampires isn't a new thing. This has been a thing since I think the beginning. I don't know the beginning of history, but it's been a thing.
Yeah, very, very far back in history, where you get some of these tales in mythology that come through. So this image is they're like British soldiers from the 1700s, or early 1700s. Think War of Independence era type of thing. So one of the things you see here is it's a lying in state. It's a thing that you only really do for sort of strict Catholics and royalty and things like that. But part of it was to show that someone was dead. You'd have them set up on the trestles underneath in an open casket where people could pay their last respects. Be in the main room of the house, which obviously then means anyone can get in there and ram a stake through the heart just to make sure they're not a vampire, which is presumably what has happened, and that's what they just discovered. But it is, as it says, desecration of a corpse. It's a crime to do things like that. You're not allowed to start messing around with corpses. So it's that people's strongly held beliefs and also the law sort of interacting. Like, are you willing to break the law for that belief? How strongly do you believe?
And there's another picture of soldiers, looks like they're desecrating a corpse. As far as I can tell, and this one I found it interesting. I have a little trouble understanding what it exactly is going. More like a bunch of miners buffed into a corpse, and looks like a couple of miners, gold miners or whatever they are.
That looks sort of 1600s. That's
1600s, yeah.
It's a graveyard. As you can see the cross in the background as well. It looks like some sort of lord standing over, and he's got his men to deal with this. So this will be something that we'll be talking about as well, of when stuff goes wrong, people are looking for something or someone to blame. And then it might be, we need to sort out this, so they will exhume the body and then make sure that they're not a vampire as well, to protect the town or village. So it's quite interesting. It's similar to sort of medieval witches, where if the crops failed, then you'd go, there's a witch. Same sort of thing. If people are dying of some sort of blood-borne disease, it just could be a plague of mosquitoes, and people wouldn't make the connection back then, because obviously they didn't know about the transference of blood. So you might have a disease transferred that way, but because it involves blood, people's loss of blood, vampire as well.
I mean, we're going to go a bit of a tangent here. What was your first experience with vampires? What was the first form of media that connected you to vampires? For me, it was Dracula, of course. Dracula, the classic story of Dracula was my first bump in with vampires when I was a younger kid.
I think for me, it would have been, I don't know if it was Dracula itself, but the old tales are quite like the old fairy tales and the old legends of like knights and things like that as well. So I used to read books that were about those sort of tales and legends. So that was my first sort of proper encounter. And then obviously the classic Dracula coming into it as well. And then, as we all know, the Count from Sesame Street. Classic vampire. There you got Count Duckula. Absolutely loved Count Duckula as well. There was a lot of vampire stuff going on when we were kids.
I mean, it was a very popular thing. But but when it comes to an historical sense, actual historical sense, it's the Hungarian city of Transylvania.
Transylvania,
Transylvania, yes. Hungarian city of Transylvania.
That's a weird one as well, because the Transylvanian region is actually, it's Hungarian and Romanian.
Yeah.
As well. It's like I've met a few people from there that my wife's worked with as well. They said it's depending on who you speak to, you've got to make sure that you get it right, but a lot of them will speak both languages, because it's on that sort of almost disputed border area as well. While it's sort of settled, it's not at the same time. It's quite an interesting one, but that's obviously that then gets into Vlad the Impaler, and because that is an area where you're going to end up with a border, like we've discussed many times before. that's how you get that type of thing.
I like this one. It says historians believe that vampires in folklore might have been real people suffering from a real disease. And when you consider the symptoms of one devastating disease, it's a pretty compelling theory.
So I had a friend years ago. I was first at uni, and he'd already completed his degree, and for his dissertation, he'd actually looked at that disease from a biological standpoint. Do you think of something like anemia? It's fairly common to be anemic. Right. You'd be pale, but a lot of those diseases, what comes along with a lot of those things, is that you get things like receding gums, which make your teeth look more prominent. Your skin recedes, and one of the other ones is they would dig up bodies to prove they were vampires. And obviously, when you die and you decompose, the blood is going to, well, it's not quite blood at that point, but it's going to come out of everywhere it can. So the flesh will recede away from the teeth, so it makes the teeth look like they've grown. The nails as well, where the flesh pulls back, it looks like your nails have grown. And then obviously that creates gaps around the edges and allows the blood to flow out. So they'd say open the mouth, the teeth look longer and there is blood in the mouth. That's classic. Oh, that's a vampire as well. So you've got this combination of people who have these not understood diseases that look like that. But there is one very specific one as well that involves it's I think it's a type of anemia as well. But part of it is you struggle with sunlight. Albinism, so albino. If you're albino, sunlight is can be very dangerous to you because you don't have that darker pigmentation, so you won't tan. Because you don't have that level of melanin, you can't protect yourself from the sun. So going out in the sun is dangerous. You'd hide away from sunlight. It'd be very pale, withdrawn, hide away from sunlight. And you can end up with red eyes.
Yes.
If you've got albino animals, often have red eyes, and that's how you tell they're fully albino rather than just a white animal. And so if you add all of that together, like pretty much everything that I'm saying is, I can think of a vampire that's done that, or this has been shown to be a vampire. So people are just putting all of these things together, and it goes into the rumor mill. And then you get a whole bunch of people with torches and pitchforks rocking up at the local graveyard, digging people up and stabbing them, which is quite mental, really. But it's mass hysteria. It's weirdly enough, this is where one of the connections comes in with modern day things as well. If you think about, say, after 9/11, the way that Muslims were treated, because people were fearful of Muslims because of the terrorism, the ramping up of, say, the TSA for the US, our border controls, having our armed police being more prominent around airports and train stations. They removed all the bins from our train stations. Now just have hoops with bags hanging off them, so bombs in. They'd already started doing that because of Northern Ireland and the troubles, because putting a bag with a bomb in it in a bin. So we already knew about that, but there was this ramping up of that and this fear, this slight edge to, they're a Muslim. What do they think about this as well? And so you get that kind of, that's an effect that we have seen in our lifetimes. I mean, people can think about how they see that taking place, like in the media or just in person when they're walking around. This is a very similar thing. It's humans doing the human thing of being fearful, and then sort of is built up that there's this thing because they don't understand. They're fearful of it, and therefore go to these extremes to get rid of it in certain cases as well.
And so you kind of know how vampires, they say you have to kill them with a wooden stake, and and all that good stuff. Now we're going to get into how that came to be, because that actually came to be by a very important person in Romanian history, Vlad the Impaler.
There's two reasons for the stakes. Vlad the Impaler because he used to like impaling people on
Yeah.
stakes. He was known as he was known for it because he used to use it extensively. It was relatively a common punishment thing. It was the crucifixion of the day.
Right.
So it was rare to do it to lots of people, but it wasn't uncommon for it to be meted out as a punishment as well. So you think if it goes to Romans and the crucifixion, you have obviously we know about the crucifixion happens in small amounts, small groups of people, but then you have the rebellion of Spartacus, where they were crucified up and down the Appian Way, large amounts of them, and that's known for that. This is the same situation with impaling, and he was had quite a lot of fun with it as well. And it was one of the other parts of it is he seemed to prefer it and like doing it, which is we don't know how much of that is propaganda and how much of that is he actually did, because some of the lords back then were pretty vicious about liking their punishments. The other part of stakes comes from Norse mythology. There is the only where there was an undead being and it was immortal. You couldn't kill it because it was already dead. So the only thing that you could do was hold it down. So you used to bury it in a bog, and then you drive a stake through it to hold it down, because the stake meant that it didn't have the strength to get out as well. And that's why in some vampire lore you see the stake not killing the vampire, but the stake weakening the vampire to allow you to kill them as well. So you get these two separate historical bits coming together, and you get these slight differences all the way through as well. But yeah, Vlad. Yeah, Vlad Tepe's the second or third. I can't remember which one.
I mean, it's considered one of the most important rulers in Romanian history.
Yeah,
but
let's carry on. Sorry, I was agreeing with you.
Yeah, but here's the thing about Romania back in the 1400s. It was divided into different kingdoms. There were many different kingdoms of Romania. You have, it was, it's not like now Romania is one entire country. You had different parts of Romania. You had
if you think about it historically as well,
right?
that you have the collapse of the Byzantines happens in the 1400s. After that collapse, obviously you get the Turks that come in as well. But when you get a kingdom collapse, or an empire collapse, you end up with these small groups, these different areas that then make their own kingdoms from the ashes of this empire. And this is what happened. And then you get the Turks turning up as well, which then leads to some levels of unification. And he was well known for fighting against the Turks as well. There's one of the great Dracula films actually follows a bit of lore where Vlad is. So there was a whole thing where you had to give your child as a hostage to them, otherwise they would then come in and to prevent you from rebelling as well. And that he was one of these children, and that's how he learned to fight them, and that his hatred for them then comes back and fights. So it uses some of that mythology about being this great warrior, and then mixes it up with the vampire mythology at the same time as well. It was a really good film, actually, that one. I think it's just called Dracula, so you're gonna have to sift through all the films called Dracula to find it. But...
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Dracula is based on Vlad the Impaler. That was his inspiration. But that was the inspiration for Dracula, Vlad the Impaler.
It's here we are. So this then, sorry, I knew there was a connection here to something,
right.
And the connection is to Elizabeth Bathory as well, who's another inspiration for Dracula. That there are some inspirations that come from her. And she was from Hungary. In the later 1600s. She was late 1500s to early 1600s. And she was a countess. So the whole idea of bathing in the blood of virgins. That was her. That's what she did. She was a known serial killer, and they used to pick up children and do that. There's a great film about it as well. It's almost a lit RPG. The film. It's weird. They get sucked into a computer game, if I remember rightly, or she gets sucked out of the computer game. It's a horror film, obviously.
So, and here's a picture of, I need a drawing of Vlad the Impaler. As you can see, impaling people through the stakes. There they go. And they go somebody else cutting up the bodies. And this movie, this one was a hold back from the gruesome nature of Vlad the Impaler, of how he punished his enemies.
And it looks like they're cooking and eating them as well, which is even more disturbing.
Yeah, it's even more disturbing. Obviously, this is just a drawing, but it's funny that Vlad the Impaler gets this reputation, but yet you talk to any Romanian, people consider him a hero in Romanian history. He's considered a hero. So yeah, it's crazy. That's what makes it even crazier.
It's other because we, for the majority of them, we know of him purely through Dracula, whereas obviously in Romania they know him as the lord that he was and what he did for Romania. And when you go back looking at those times of what people did, as we've talked about many times, it's questionable what they did because we're looking at it through modern eyes as well.
Right.
But and then there's the exaggeration as well, and he's not going to stop the exaggeration because it goes to the propaganda episodes.
Exactly.
He's going to impale the entire army when he defeats them. He's known for defeating armies. People aren't going to want to fight him. He only has to impale a few people to start off with, and if everyone thinks he's going to do it, you don't have to impale anyone anymore. It's like, because people think you're going to do it is enough because you've got that fear behind it. So there's a question over, did he really impale people that excessively, or was it an event where he impaled a lot of people? He was then known for that event. It wasn't that he was constantly doing it. It was like, what time is it? Oh, it's 10 o'clock. Better get to the impaling. It's like it probably wasn't that kind of situation. It was just that was a favoured punishment in the area, and he was very draconian when he defeated armies as well. Because a lot of them were prisoners of war, which were often just all executed as well. The Turks used to do it quite frequently, enslave, mutilate, and execute. So he's just doing what they were doing at the time. Is common in that type of warfare and what was happening to be that brutal as well. And when you just look at one side of it, that's when it looks weird as well, and people get these reputations. But I suppose it's something that we'll probably never know unless we happen to find a mass grave of impaled people somewhere, which is always a possibility.
And so, all right. So then, let's pull up this picture here. There we go. We got a bunch. We got somebody holding the cross. And now this connects nicely to my next topic, which is the view of Christians and Catholics of vampires. Because this is in a story. Because in media, another way to kill vampires is through crucifixes. It's for the crucifix. Because you see, in historically, Christians and Catholics together, right? They believe vampires are a creation of Satan, of Lucifer. So in essence, I mean, I'm a Christian myself, so yeah, we kind of believe that vampires are a thing of evil. And this is not a new thing, Aiden. This goes back all the way to the 1200s.
Yeah, and one of the other interesting things about this is if you look at the Scandinavian element to it, it was seen as a disease, and that's where that comes from the Drauga of the Norse mythology. I think it's the Icelandic sagas that it comes from, is that it's a disease. So while it is evil, it's not from a source of like an evil god or something like that. It's more a plague and that you get. It's a disease type of thing, or that attitude towards it, rather than it being these are demons sent by Satan himself.
And this picture, Aiden, I kind of looked it up a little more. This picture is supposed to be depicting people, Christians, or I don't know, they're Quakers or Puritans, burying what they believe are vampires. They're burying them.
Yeah,
and this connects well into the. And this kind of connects well into the Reformed churches, the Puritans and the Quakers, and their views on the supernatural.
They've got some pretty strong views on that. Particularly, I find it weird that it's believed in as much. It's not considered just mythology. It's considered an actual reality.
Yeah, yes. See, that's what gets me, Aiden. That's why this topic is so. I mean, it was in my head most of the week because because here's the thing. I mean, as Christians, which I am, okay, I'll be open and be honest. I'm from the Christian denomination that we don't believe in vampires. This is all just a thing for Halloween, right? We say we don't believe in it, but yet we talk so much about it. But yet it's almost like we do believe in it. Like we believe it's real, even though we kind of say it's not. You know what I mean? It's that paradox. It's that perfect paradox. Of believing something that, even though it's not real in your head, but you still believe it is.
It's like the Catholic Church still do exorcisms. They still have exorcists as well. So there is this belief, because they know people have this belief as well, that while you get large cross sections of the church that are, well, this isn't happening, it's old medieval style religion, that actually where you do get these strong beliefs in it as well, they have to cater to these beliefs, because it was the church themselves who said this, so they've got to stand up and go, we will protect you from this as well, where people believe that thing as well. I find it weird that a lot of the Protestant churches have such strong beliefs as well. You see, as you said, obviously some of the Reformed churches and the Quakers, because the whole big thing of Protestantism is getting rid of Catholic superstition. That was one of the founding principles of Protestantism. The Catholics are just incredibly superstitious, and we're more enlightened. This is a more enlightened way to connect to God as well. Yet there's still this fearful mythology, and well, it's like vampires and the burning of witches as well. It just goes to show what that was, and I'm pretty sure it was Protestants who did more witch hunting and burning of witches across. Drowning was the common method over here with the ducking stool. But you get these laws coming through quite late. It's one of my favourite facts is the last person convicted of witchcraft in the UK was convicted in 1945 during the Second World War. At the end of the Second World War in Scotland, because Scotland still had the laws of witchcraft on the books, and I think she was, like you go to a mystic at a fair. She was she was someone like that. She was a very old lady, so it comes out of the that Victorian seance crowd stuff. And she was accused of aiding the Germans through witchcraft and was convicted in 1945.
I didn't know that.
Because she was old, they commuted the sentence and then quietly got rid of the law because it's clearly nonsense. So even up to very late dates, these things, especially if you think the way that UK law works, is that you don't get rid of a law. You write another law to negate it. So many people say we don't have a constitution. We do actually have a constitution, but our constitution isn't like that of, say, the US, where it's a written document with very specific things, and then a bunch of volumes of books that explain this, and then the amendments to clarify, and then books and letters to clarify the amendments and so on and so forth. We don't
Right.
have that document bit. We just have that tail end bit where you have these amendments and these bits to do that. So you end up with these old laws still being on the books that are related to these things as well. It was in 97 that a lot of them were scrapped. There was a massive law reform to essentially tidy it up, because what kept happening was people would find these obscure laws and then try and use them to get off a charge, and then you'd have to stop the case. The Lords would have to look at that. I think half of it used to have to go to the Star Chamber, which is, look up the Star Chamber, people. That's a weird bit of a Britishism.
Star Chamber?
The Star Chamber, it's the High Lords who essentially do the stuff for the king. It's still, I don't know if we still have it. I think we still have it. But
it was an English court, right? An English court that sat at the royal palace of Westminster for the late 15th century to the mid 17th century.
Yeah, so it's.
I'll be honest,
various iterations.
I've heard of it, but I never really know too much about the Star Chamber until now. I'll be honest.
Yeah, it's one of those bizarre things. But essentially, what you'd have to do you'd have to go there and go, look, this law's clearly ridiculous. You then have to put another law through, which then takes a couple of years, and then the case would have to start again. So it kept stagnating cases. So they did all of these reforms to get rid of them. So, you know, the whole you can shoot a Welshman with a longbow if it's a Wednesday afternoon in Loughborough, like those types of laws that were weird local laws that were written for specific times in history, but because of the nature of our law, you still have these things cropping up as well. But oddly enough, there isn't laws against vampirism, but there are laws preventing people from, so this desecration one that we talked about,
right.
You're not allowed to desecrate the corpse. So it was clearly acknowledged that people did believe in vampirism, so we need a law to prevent people doing these things to get rid of the vampire as well, which is really interesting. So you still get hints of it throughout our older laws, which is just absolutely bizarre. But then that's UK law. UK law's mental,
right? And by the way, what we're looking at here is a Puritan. This was what the Puritans looked like. You know, this was, you know, Aidan, I want to ask you, have you ever read The Crucible?
No, I haven't actually. That's one I haven't read. I've heard of it.
By Arthur Miller. It's a really good play. I read it in Virginia high school. Man, it was a great book. Even though this is based on Salem, Massachusetts, and witches, but the same could be applied to vampires as well to a degree. And by the way, I wanted to add that Christians, especially those of the Reformed Church, believe that vampires and witches were the same people, were the same kind.
Yes, I was about to get into that. So the Puritans, so the famous with witches, you had Hans Kramer's Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of Witches, as it was sometimes referred to. And that didn't just look at witches, it looked at all of these supernatural beings and ways in which you prevent them and get rid of them. So so we think of vampires as drink blood, you don't have blood, you die. But actually there's other types of vampires in there. So you have psychic vampires as well. And they will drain your life force, not your blood, it's more esoteric, your life force. And it will be through a psychic attack that they will then drain your life force, and then you will eventually die. Well. So you then have that was obviously codified within this Puritan thing, and that's even harder to see signals of. We just go, yeah, they're going a bit mental, and they weren't before. Clearly a vampire. It's like not the logical conclusion most people have come through. They probably just go, perhaps the guy's a bit depressed. But that is one of the conclusions that you'd have if you were believing like the witch hunters and things as well, because and it's this evil component that you're talking about, that they are sent from Satan, and witches were the brides of Satan as well. Yes. So therefore vampires would be connected through that line of thinking as well. So it's this.
And now I wanted to kind of go on a bit of a tangent. I'm sure you heard of Wicca, right?
Wicca, yes.
I asked this because a good friend of mine, Jennifer Folk, she's into Wicca, and
Yes, she is. Yeah.
and and unfortunately, she gets a little upset when people confuse Wicca for witchcraft.
Yes,
So I kind of want to know how did we get to that point of confusing, Wicca, which is a metaphysical kind of thing, with just absolute witchcraft and all this craziness. What did it all blow up from?
So this Malleus Maleficarum obviously got a lot to answer for because it conflates a lot of these things together. It pulls a lot of things in. But this goes right the way back to actually midwives as well. It's the reason why midwives are neither doctors nor nurses. It's a separate category of medical profession. And it goes back to very early on that you'd have that old woman in the village who would be able to, or she might be wandering between villages, knew about, through experience and training, how to deal with birth. And at that time, obviously, you need ways to stop bleeding. You need ways to help pregnant women. So this is where cauldrons come in, where you have the Saxon recipes for cook this and then give it to the pregnant woman to be better. So as most people know, when you're pregnant, you often have low iron because obviously growing a baby, your body uses up a lot of iron, so you need a boost of your iron. And these recipes all stated that you had to use an old rusty cauldron. And then so the iron from the cauldron would then go. They didn't know that this was what was happening, but the rust would go into it, and that would then allow the person to obviously gain extra iron in their diet. It wasn't actually what was being made in it; it was the pot it was made in. They didn't know that. They knew that the pot was important. They didn't know why. Now that a lot of that is a herb lore and that type of thing, which connects to the old druidic practices. The druidic practices, as we know, go right the way back, and they were seen as evil. Druids must be stamped out. This is Julius Caesar that we've got back to now with this. And then from that stayed in the consciousness all the way through. So as soon as you get Christians and witchcraft, people who practice basic herb lore and do this, there was a lot of midwives killed for being witches just because they knew how to make things with herbs that healed people, considered magic. And hence why witches are considered to have big black cauldrons, because a big black cauldron is a nice rusty iron pot. And that is that connection then into witchcraft. However, obviously Wicca is obviously got its metaphysical side. Using herbs to help people and to heal people is essentially where we get medicine from. Is we now know what ones work, what ones don't, and so we can deal with that. Wicca is that offshoot of that side of it. So you get midwives now, and obviously you get Wicca coming sort of out of that branch of it's there to help type of thing. But because they were equated at one point with witchcraft, people go, oh, well, it's herbs and potions and things, clearly witchcraft, because people just go, it all goes into one pot. Sorry, the Freudian slip. But it's because it connects back to that original misunderstanding of what was going on, and then you get overzealous Christians who are frightened and need someone to blame as well. And if you get a strange woman wandering village to village and always being around sick people but remaining healthy because, well, like a doctor would, they would know how to heal themselves. That then means that it looks like there's something supernatural about them, and you end up with it all being connected together as well. And this goes back to the vampirism thing we were saying.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't go out and they're very pale and withdrawn in a house, and then you just have to have gum disease and instantly you're a vampire.
Exactly. And this is where the goth subculture comes from.
Yeah.
The goth. Well, no, which has, I gotta say, it has a little relation to the actual goths that came in history.
Yeah, it's I always found that highly amusing.
Yeah, but believe it or not, it's not as crazy as you think. I mean, okay, there's not too much connection, but you know, the Goths were a dramatic tribe, right? The Goths.
Well,
So,
yeah, they made up a large portion of the Roman army at one point.
And they did have their paganism beliefs.
Yep.
You know, they were pagan, so you know there was a little interconnection with the idea of paganism and paganism of the Goth subculture today. So it's not totally a miss, but yeah, for the most part, it's kind of a very big misconception.
So one of the things I just want to double check something.
Yeah, go ahead, take your time.
So
we're researching in real time.
There's something called Arianism, which is considered heretical.
Okay.
That came about, and it was relatively early on. It's attributed to a guy from Alexandria in Egypt, from the 3rd century AD. So it's the time when they were trying to work out what Christianity was. So you had all these different denominations, and you ended up with a lot of tribes who were Arian. And I'm trying to work out if the Goths were one of them as well, because the whole idea of heresy. As the Council of Nicaea, it was considered a heresy because the Council of Nicaea did a load of weird stuff. Germanic tribes. Yes, it was the Gothic tribes who were who were all seen as these heretics.
But that's exactly that's what I'm saying, right? You know, so there was a little
so that's where you get the connection.
Yeah, because after all, why do we call them Goths? I mean, because why didn't we call them just the weird people in black? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's all to do with the Goths were heretical.
Heretical, right?
Believed in the same belief system. Because that's one of the things you can't be a Satanist without believing in God, because you can't have Satan without God, because you have to believe that part of mythology, for example. So it's part of religion. So it's essentially the if you look at Christianity as a mythological subset, and the Christian beliefs, the Judeo-Christian beliefs, then you get things like Satanism and all these heretical beliefs. You have to believe in that core thing of God, Jesus, Holy Spirit in some fashion,
right?
To be heretical, because otherwise you're just a different religion and it's nothing to do with it.
And speaking of the Goths, yeah, here's a picture of the Goths, and yeah, you know, and they you know, just looking at, just getting along, just mingling with each other. That was the idea of mingling, the Goths.
With their horned helmets and the wings on the helmets.
Yeah, wings on the helmet. That's another thing. Although a little of a tangent about the wings on the helmet, some people think it was a Viking thing.
It's through Germanic. So Scandinavians are they're a subset of the Germanic tribes, where they split off, and it's just a massive subset. So you get what we would call Germanic, and then it's Scandinavian. They're very close. Obviously, think Denmark, classic example. We consider them Scandinavian, but actually they're Germanic. Realistically, they're both. So you end up with these. So it's Ride of the Valkyries as well. The Valkyries, the wings, as well, and the horns. That's where the Vikings having horns comes from. Is people doing Wagner. It was just completely made up as a costume for the play, and that's where you get some of these things as well. And then it ends up in art, which is quite interesting. But it shows that there's this connection between all of the Germanic areas as well. But it's sort of the Germanic tribes obviously ended up, Scandinavians ended up Christianized, but later on they didn't. It was very different how that happened.
So anyway, I found something interesting just now, Aiden. And we're gonna go all the way back to Babylonian history.
Ah, yes.
Here we go. Look, these Babylonian vampire creatures were called the Ikimu. The Ikimu. The creation of an Ikimu was believed to be influenced by specific factors: improper burial practices, violent deaths, dying without experiencing most, starvation, drowning with some of the circumstances that could lead to the formation of an Ikimu, a Babylonian vampire. Yeah, so even Babylonians believed in vampires, as crazy as it sounds.
It's when you look at those things as well. So if you look at ghosts and the different type of ghosts that there are, angry ghosts, sort of poltergeists and things like that. We part of the mythos around ghosts is it's unfinished business. It's that they weren't buried properly. They had a violent death, which keeps them into this world. So you get a lot of things with restless dead in general that are all linked throughout this. And we've created this vampire mythos, but actually you can see that they're all very connected at the beginning. You've got this idea of different undead creatures as well. Like the Draugr aren't technically vampires; they're linked to vampires. It was from what I was reading, it was a guy in the 1800s decided, oh well, they're kind of like vampires really, but actually they're kind of not. They're more like wraiths who are protecting tombs where they died, royal tombs as well. It's more like a wight than a vampire as such. But it does have part of the vampire mythos in there, which is the disease part of it, where it's spread. That's how it's spread as well. So these connections are very interesting. Where when you start looking at all of these different historical routes that you get into vampirism, you see which bits have been lost and shifted to other lore, and which bits have been kept all the way through. And you can find these little bits connected to so many different cultures as well. So 2 seconds, I've just got to do something very, very quick. I will be right back.
No problem, my friend. So yeah, as you can see, as we discovered, vampires actually go back as far as Babylonian history. And we could even go into Egypt a little bit with the idea of embalming, that you had to embalm and bury the dead correctly, or they will become mummies. They will come back to life and haunt you. You know, mummies are like the Egyptian version of vampires, or the zombies. More like zombies, but you get the idea. It is kind of similar to the Babylonians, improper burial practices. You know that they believed that they had a certain way of burying people, and they had to follow it very, very carefully. And even the way you died, if it was a violent death, that there might have been a chance that these vampire creatures would come to life. So it's just very interesting to that. People think that vampires are just a thing that came up in the 20th century. No, it's actually more like the 20th century BC. You can go all the way back, back to the BC era, and all kinds of things. So it's really interesting that some people, like I was saying before, Aiden, people think this is a 20th century idea. No, this is actually a 20th century BC. You could even go back to the 20th century BC,
yeah,
and see this being a thing.
So one of the other bits, looking at history of how far it goes back, of it being just part of cultural heritage and cultural history. So if you look at, say the Germanic tribes, the Celtic tribes, around the time of the Romans, we don't know huge amounts about them because we don't have this written tradition. What we can see is in the early Saxon burials, you see this an expression of something that has obviously been passed down by word of mouth. And the famous Saxon burials where they bury people face down who are suspected of vampires. So when they tried to dig out of the grave, they would dig downwards, or they would put rocks on them, or they cut their heads off and they put it between their legs so they get confused. And there's lots of different ways that you find these burials, and it is linked, in essence, to vampirism, this fear of vampirism.
And you're talking about the Saxons, right? You just spoke about the Saxons. Ironically, it's funny because we could connect the Romans, Because don't forget, when the Romans fought the Saxons, they were already converted to Christianity. They had founded the religion of Christianity. So now, the Romans had an additional reason to hate the Saxons, because now they were considered pagan. Because it's funny, because Rome used to be pagan with the Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Ceres, all the different gods, and then they converted into a monotheistic religion, the Christianity, or the Roman Catholic Church.
And so now, one of the interesting things is the title of Pope. The actual title is Pontifex Maximus. Pontifex Maximus is just the head of the Roman Church. Always had Julius Caesar's Pontifex Maximus as well. So you had this changing of Christianity. It's why a lot of people say that Christianity, especially Roman Christianity, was just, like we talked about Saturnalia and things, just put over the top of this, which is how you get this mythology being pulled in, because it's connected a lot to all of these things that people thought of. And then, as you say, under Christianity, well, it comes from Satan because it's evil. That's how they explained these things. It was that different shift in why they were there.
And but I found it interesting that by the time the Rome fought the Saxons, they were already Christianized. I would have liked to see how would Rome react if they were still pagan, themselves. They were still. I wonder if Pluto, the god of the underworld, would have what he would have had to say. Pluto.
Yeah, so you get this this weird sort of alternative of what was this? It's just like when you look at Roman mythology, it's their ideas of spirits and ghosts were they had those ideas of spirits and ghosts coming back in that sense. Like we looked at the Babylonians, people coming back as well. So it's quite interesting. I've never come across Romans dealing with vampirism until obviously you get a lot later. As you say, it's the Christian era.
Because I think the closest they would have been was the Carthaginians, maybe the closest, the Carthaginians. Because the Carthaginians believe in killing the young, to sacrifice the young to please their god. But as a point, the
blood drinking, sacrificing young, all of those types of things.
But the god of Baal, that was the main god, Baal. Anyway, I wanted to point this out, that this graphic I just found. Vampires as an archetype in the collective unconscious. According to Carl Jung, the vampire represents the shadow archetype, a symbol of our deepest fears and desires. Vampires embody the fear of death, taking life itself, the ultimate violation of life itself. That's what the vampire represents, a fear of. It's a symbol of our deepest fears and desires, which is why vampires are mostly, you see them are not in paranormal romance.
Yes, it's that part of horror, because the way we see vampires is powerful. We see them as eternally beautiful as well, unblemished. And they were, for a long time, obviously, being pale meant that you could spend a lot of time indoors. It meant you weren't working in the fields, which meant you were richer and you were more eligible. So being paler was more attractive, is one of the things that has been seen. And that then connects to that as well, of the desire to be rich and powerful through that as well, which is how obviously a lot of people see them, as you say, paranormal romance is a great example.
I have a friend. She writes in a romance and a paranormal. So I've read her books. Pretty good author, and I can see the connection. And now I put up this graphic as well. This is the modern vampire appeal. The modern vampire. The fascination with vampires persists due to the symbolic nature, fear of death, and desire of immortality. Which kind of connects to the historical view, the fear of death. Because even back in the day, people feared death, and everybody wanted to find the desire of immortality, whether it was cheating death, or you got Ponce de Leon finding the fountain of youth, or at least he thought he found the fountain of youth, but it turned out to be absolutely nothing. So you
yeah,
get
the
the idea.
Geez, we've got to do an episode of that because that is absolutely amazing when they try to find it in their 20s.
Yeah.
But one of the things that is what you said just remind me of is one of the big things for the Catholic Church in the medieval period, especially around the Black Death and the big plagues that happened, was it was this fear of losing your immortal soul if you weren't a good Christian. Was that so? By in some thought processes, depending on which bit of time into which branch of Christianity you're going through, this idea that you is getting weirdly deep into Christian Christianity, but that rather than predestination, that if you were good, you could get into heaven. This then comes in through indulgences, where you could essentially buy your way through, or even crusades, where you would go and do God's work. And doing God's work gets you into that. So this is fear of immortality. So doing that without doing it the Christian way being to serve God and do rejecting that to find another way of doing it is then heretical. Hence, vampires being heretical, vampires being evil, connecting, blah, blah, blah. And that whole concept then starts to make a lot more sense when you start tying it up with the thought processes in the medieval period behind a lot of the things that the Catholic Church was doing at that time period.
All right, so keep going on. Vampires challenge conventional views of life, death, and boundaries of moral behavior. Which, yeah, if you read paranormal romance, yeah, you kind of get that same idea. And then vampires as cultural mirrors. They reflect our deepest anxieties and desires, from sexual freedom to the fear of the unknown. Going back to the Babylonian idea of their version of the vampire, you know, if you died of a violent death, you know, there was a chance that you did something really wrong in your life.
Yeah. So you've got this. This it goes back to this fear of death and this deep anxiety level as well. It's one of the things that vampires tend to be portrayed as is lonely. That they can't be part of society, and that is a big fear for everyone. Being the outcast,
right?
Society runs throughout the entirety of history because outcasts are seen as bad people. Often they're something to be feared. Being seen as that is a reflection of that works through as well. And then obviously they've got the whole sexual freedom thing. Modern vampires.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at Rasputin.
Yes, yeah, he's a great example of that. Yeah,
Rasputin was a big example right there. Yeah, a guy with such power and such influence, and yet he was an outcast for most of his life. Rasputin. I mean, I think we're gonna have to do another episode about Rasputin later on. Yeah. I mean, it's so much, so much. I mean, and some people think that he might have been a real life vampire.
Yeah, he's, and when you look at that, and then it's like you were saying, this crossover between witches and vampires. Witches don't have to be female; it's just
warlocks.
Because we use the term warlock as well, but that was actually quite a lot later as a term. It was a strange, weird definition of it. Actually, a witch could be a man. There were lots of men put for being witches, and then the term warlock came out, so they could divide up women and men, and it as well. But warlocks today are more considered evil wizards, witches are, but witches have a different ethos behind them as well. As I said, going back into the herb lore side.
Oh yeah. And then of course Wicca. I'm sure Jennifer will have more information about Wicca. We're gonna have to bring. I'm gonna have to see if I can bring Jennifer for an episode, just so we can talk about the history of Wicca.
That'd be really interesting as well, actually.
Yeah, but I know she's a very busy woman. But it'd be, if we could get on one day, that'd be really cool. Because I honestly don't know too much about it. I know some of it, but I want to get an expert on that here on the show.
Yeah, same. I know bits and bobs about stuff like that. I've looked into a lot of that through several of my interests, and yeah, it's yeah, that I've always had this interest in the supernatural as well. Now, I can understand the appeal of vampires, quite frankly, because it just connects so much to how we think. But it does show that throughout history, humans have changed very little with the fears and anxieties they have. And the reason that vampires are, pardon the pun, immortal in culture is because they haven't, while they have changed slightly, the core part of it is that fear of death, is the immortality side of it that people want, but it's immortality with drawbacks that it's seen of these other things that we don't want as well. But obviously it's that, but what if I could control this, what if I could do that as well, which obviously plays on people's minds and allows that to stay in consciousness, because it's an expression of who we are. It's like, I'm turning into Carl Jung now. But yeah, it's that. I'm glad you brought that Carl Jung thing up, because it's that psychology bit that shows throughout history. The way that we thought about vampires is, yeah, we're not as frightened of them these days, but some people are as well.
Anyway, I can't believe I'm saying this, Ethan, but we are already over the hour.
Oh
man, we just wow, man, this was a very fun episode to do, man. You know, we managed to go over the hour yet again, like we always do. So, guys, I got some things to do later on, so we're gonna wrap it up here. But we had some fun. You know, I'm sure. So I'm sure. I hope you guys got a more of a what we have to call more of a new point of view about vampires. It's more than just what you see on the media. There is plenty of history behind vampires. Whether they're real or not, we'll leave it up to your discretion. You know, we're not gonna say whether they're real or not. I have my discretion. Aiden has his own discretion. We're gonna let you guys have your own discretion about what you think. But anyway, I hope you guys learned a few things here and there. This was a fun one to do. So we're gonna be back in a couple of weeks. So we'll come back with a topic for 2 weeks from now. But Aiden, this was a fun one. A great topic, my friend.
Yeah, really, really good. I'm glad I chose it.
Yeah, really fun episode. Unfortunately, Dungeon Dank, I guess, couldn't show up. He was excited for this one, but I guess he was on call for work. So I'm sure he'll be watching this later on. And I hope, and for those who missed it, you'll be able to watch the replay of this on Facebook in the Book Asylum podcast group, and on YouTube when the video does go up on the YouTube channel. So. And
feel free to comment when you go through the rewatch, because we do look at the comments and check, and we will reply to you.
You know, at least we'll try to reply the best we can. Obviously, if a topic like this is not more what we call theory over fact, is not more theory over fact. This is kind of a different kind of topic, but we had a lot of fun with it. You know, we just wanted to have some fun, and get away from just pure facts and go into the world of conspiracies and theories. You know.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think we should do episode. I think the next episode should be about the history of conspiracy theories.
Yes, that'd be a brilliant one to do as well, actually, and lead on.
So, guys, join us in 2 weeks. We're gonna talk about the history of conspiracy theories. That should be a fun one. So come on back in 2 weeks, and we'll have some tea and some coffee, or whatever you guys, or in Aiden's case, whatever he's drinking. Beer. And we're gonna talk some conspiracy theories. But until then, guys, I'm Tertullian Antius Maximus. That's my man, the gate Aiden Collier. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day weekend for my American friends. Take care.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.